Hi, welcome to Holliston Parks and Recreation. I'm Mark Frank, Director of Parks and Recreation. Today we're going to be doing a promo to help get the word out about our blossoming cooking program. We have some after-school classes for kids coming up in April. That would be our Thursday after-school program. We have a program for both the Miller age group and the Adams age group, so we hope you'll take advantage of that. We'll also be offering adult cooking classes sporadically throughout the year. If you are interested in getting a group together to take a cooking class, we can customize a menu to whatever you're looking for. We have myself instructing. We have another fabulous cooking instructor who does our after-school programs, Sandhya Jain. We can make it work for you. Just call our office and we'll get that set up. Today we're going to be making a couple of dishes. We're going to be making a classic New England baked stuffed lobster, and we're also going to be making clams with a Parmesan crust. The clams are sort of an appetizer, and the lobsters are more of a main dish, but we're going to do it in reverse order for timing purposes, so hopefully that works. But if we also have written recipes for this, if you're interested in that, you can email my office, frank.m@holliston.k12.ma.us. That's also how you can reach out to us to try to set up a cooking class of your own. So without further ado, we're going to get started. What I have here is about 2 inches of boiling salt water. I put a little bit of lemon and a little bit of shallot into the broth. It adds a little flavor when we're steaming the lobsters. A lot of people, when they do lobsters, they'll boil them. They'll put them they'll fill water kind of all the way up. I like to do about 2 inches of water, and I like to steam the lobsters rather than boil them. There's a couple of reasons for that. Because we're going to be cooking these twice, we're going to be steaming them, and then we're going to be baking them once we put the stuffing in. If you boil them, sometimes they kind of fill up with water, and then when you go to cut them open to stuff them, the water goes everywhere, and it can be a mess. So I like to steam them. The other thing that happens if you put just a couple inches of water in is the broth that comes out of the steaming process is really useful. It's well concentrated. It takes on a lot of that sort of essence of lobster. And when you're using that broth then to kind of add the moisture to the stuffing that we're going to be making, it adds a little bit of flavor too. Right here I have 2 chicken lobsters. These are both about 1-pound lobsters. I like to take the rubber bands off. I don't like to boil with the rubber bands on. I don't know if it actually makes a difference, but in my brain it's a little superstitious thing. I don't like to boil the rubber in there with everything else. So I'm going to pop these in. With 1-pound lobsters, you would generally want to steam them for about 15 to 18 minutes. Because we're cooking these twice, I'm going to go on the lower end of that. We're going to take these out, we're going to put a stuffing together, and then we're going to put them in the oven to finish. So I'm going to go on the lower end because if I steam them all the way and then I pop them in the oven, it can dry the lobster meat out a little bit, and that's not what we're going for. All right, so the stuffing that we're putting together is going to contain, there's a few very important ingredients here. All right, it's going to be a seafood stuffing, so I'm going to be using shrimp, and I'm going to be using some fresh crab meat. This is fresh. It's kind of hard to find fresh crab meat. This is fresh claw meat that I got at Whole Foods. Canned crab meat will work fine for this. It's totally up to you, whatever you can find or whatever you want. We're going to use a Ritz cracker that I'm going to crush up, and we're going to use that as the breading for the stuffing. And then we're going to use some fresh vegetables. I like to use a red bell, a green bell pepper, and some onion, a little bit of garlic. I think that the bell peppers give it a little bit of sweetness. I like the color of using 2 different ones. Sometimes I'll use an orange and a green, but it looks pretty on the plate when you use a varied set of vegetables. So first thing we're going to do is get the pan, some olive oil, and we're going to use some butter. I'm going to use about 3 tablespoons here. We're going to get that going. And then I'm just going to do a rough chop on our vegetables. All right. The garlic's going to go in first. Crush these up. The portions on what you're doing here are really going to depend on how many lobsters you're making, how many people you're cooking for. So like I said, I'm not going to be going over portions or measurements here, but if you're looking for that, just email my office and I can get you a written recipe for this. All right, the garlic's going in. Then we'll just do a rough chop, a little bit bigger on the vegetables. I like to have kind of rustic, big chunks of vegetables in the stuffing. I think it adds some texture and it looks beautiful presenting. I'm just going to do half an onion for now because we're not making that much. I'm going to do half of each of these, I believe. We're just going to get these going in the pan until they kind of start sweating. You got to keep in mind, like with everything else, with the lobsters, with all this, we're going to be cooking it, and then we're going to be putting it in the oven to finish it off. So everything can cook just a little bit under how you would normally cook it, because we're going to be adding that last kind of blast in the oven to crisp up the stuffing. And it's going to cut down on our initial cooking time a bit. You can do it smaller, bigger if you like. It's kind of up to you. I'm just going to let these cook down for a minute. Now the crab meat is already cooked. It's very rare that you're going to find crab meat that is raw when you buy it at the market. So that's actually going to go in last because I don't want to overdo this. All right. The shrimp are raw, as you see, so we're going to pop those in. I'm going to give these a rough chop. These are just peeled, deveined shrimp. I'm just going to give them rough chop, maybe each shrimp into about 3 pieces. Then I'm just going to toss it in. All right, I'm going to let these kind of sweat out a little bit. Good. And don't forget to season as you're going, all right? I'm going to put some sea salt and a little bit of pepper in here. I'm going to take a look at these lobsters and see how they're doing. Once this cooks, we're going to add the crackers. That's going to thicken it up. And then I'm going to add a couple of things. I'm going to add some broth from the lobsters. And I'm also going to add a little bit of cooking wine. All right. One thing that I've used in the past, we're going to use these for the clams, is clam juice. It gives it kind of a briny depth of flavor. You can put that in your stuffing as well. You can buy this at any local supermarket. It's a really nice ingredient for that. We're going to skip that today because we have this beautiful lobster broth that we're going to be using for it. I'll keep moving this, and then I'm going to start crushing up my crackers for the stuffing. Now, this doesn't have to be perfect because once you get it working in the pan, they're going to break up anyways, especially once you add the moisture to it. So I'm going to get this just roughly crushed, and then as soon as this shrimp turns pink, I'm going to add it. All right, I'm going to take one of these lobsters out. This has been less than 15 minutes, but as you can see from this lobster, the tail here is really finely curled. It's almost like when you're cooking shrimp. The tighter it gets, that's an indicator that it's pretty close to being done. All right? You know, if you open it up and this tail is flat like that, it probably needs a little bit more time. But since this is curled up like this, I think we're pretty much close enough that we are going to pull these out now. Like I said, I don't want to dry them out and overcook them. So I'm going to pull these out and make sure that we avoid drying them out. And then we can also use our broth for the mixture here. These shrimp are looking close here. I'm going to go ahead and add the breadcrumbs. Okay, I'm going to add these slowly. As they absorb the moisture, you'll kind of get a feel for what the consistency of your stuffing. You can have it however you like it. Some people like it a little bit heartier, a little bit drier, the stuffing. Some people like it a little softer, a little mushier. It's just kind of on personal preference. This looks like it's going to need a little bit more, but we're getting close. Right about there. All right, and I'm going to start adding some of our wet elements here. I'm going to add some lobster broth, and I'm going to go very slowly with this as well. because you can always add water. You can always add moisture. You can't take it out once it's in there. You could add more breadcrumbs, but we're going to go nice and slow through this. Just getting there. I'm going to add a little bit of lemon juice. And then I'm going to put a little cooking wine in. This is just dry cooking wine. A lot of people use fancier wines to cook with. I think you're wasting it if you do that. This is my personal opinion. This is just Goya cooking wine, dry white. I think it works really well in this recipe. It's starting to look like stuffing. I'm going to actually add the rest of these breadcrumbs here. By the way, I have the oven already preheated to 450. You're going to want to do that well in advance because as soon as these are ready to go, you're going to want to pop them right in the oven, get this stuffing crisped right up. I forgot to fold in my crab meat. Like I said, that's pretty much the last thing to go in. You don't want to overcook that crab meat. It's already done. When you get it, it's cooked. So we're really just folding that in as kind of the last step here. This is about the consistency that I like. Like I said, I like it to be rustic. I like to see big chunks of veggies in the stuffing. I think it presents really well if you finish it that way. All right, this is going to go on a low heat on this back burner. And I'm actually going to cover it. I'm going to cover it so that it keeps that moisture in there. And I'm going to put it as low as I can get it. All right. Now, we're going to set up our lobsters. I'm going to actually move this out of the way. I'm going to present this two ways. Okay? I'm going to take this lobster. You can serve this dish as kind of the star of the dish. Everyone gets a baked stuffed lobster on their plate with some sides, veggies, whatever kind of starch you're going to cook with. Or you can have it as kind of an element of your meal. All right? If you're going to do it as the star of your dish, my suggestion would be to cut right down the middle of the lobster and stuff it that way. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. All right? I'm going to take my knife, and right here, you can see where the legs meet. All right? And I'm just going to take my knife right down that centerpiece and cut it right in half. Okay? And I'm going to continue that cut right down to the bottom of the tail. Okay? And this is what it looks like when you open up that lobster. Now, when you open up a lobster, anyone who's cooked lobster before knows that there's often going to be tamale, which is that green stuff in the center. That's basically like the liver of the lobster. All right? Some people love to eat it. I am one of those people. Other people are disgusted by it. So I understand. It adds a very deep, briny flavor. It's not for everybody. I actually, when I'm cooking this for my family, I'll put it right in the stuffing because we're big seafood people. We love that. If it's your first time making this dish, I would suggest trying to make it without. So what I would do is I would just take this and just scoop it out. I'm just going to take this, and I'm just going to scoop the tamale right out of it. Okay? You have a nice big kind of cavity in the center of the lobster that you can put your stuffing in. You can also open up the tail and stuff right all the way down through the center of the tail meat. That's one way to present this. The other way to present this, if it's just an element of a meal, like for instance, I've done a dinner party where I made a big, like a tenderloin roast, and we did kind of a surf and turf thing, and then I just had little half lobsters as options for people. So what I would do there is actually do the same cut, but I'm going to cut all the way through this time, and I'm going to cut the lobster right in half. I'll show you what that looks like. Got to be a little bit aggressive with this because you're cutting right through the shell. And these are going to fall apart on you a little bit. When I do it this way, I actually pull the legs right off. I'm not going to present the legs as part of this. So I'm going to take those legs off, and I'm actually just going to open this up. Now, these might fall apart, like I said, and then when you're putting it back in for presentation, or to put out, you can just kind of lay them back together. So I'm cutting this down the middle. I'm going to get that shell, and I'm just going to split it right open. I'm going to get the tail like this. Here, you can see that tamale. There's a lot in this one. All right, and I'm going to empty out this tamale. Okay, and then I just have a couple of half lobsters here. And this is actually what I'm going to stuff. So when you get your lobster this way, you would put the stuffing here, and you have a half a lobster for each person. All right, I'm going to take a look at my stuffing here. Beautiful. All right. Now you can kind of see on the bottom that stuffing has developed a little bit of a crust. That's what we're going for in the oven, but it's nice when you can get a little bit of it going in the pan as well. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. With the full lobster, I'm just going to take this stuffing. I'm really going to just kind of lay it right into the center cavity of that lobster. Okay, and you really want it to, when I make it, I kind of make it erupting out so that you get a lot of that stuffing with your lobster. I want some color, so I'm going to make sure there's some veggies up top. I'm going to put the stuffing all the way down, right through the tail, right in that center of that tail meat. All right. I'm going to prepare that one just like that. Now for the half lobsters, it's the same thing, it's just a slightly different presentation. I'm going to take that, I'm going to stuff it right in here. And I'm going to put the other half right in here. And again, I'm going to make sure I get some color in there, so if there's nothing up top, I'm going to get some red in there. Make sure you have a green pepper, a red pepper, and then these half lobsters, I'm just going to present just like this. Okay, and this is going into an oven at 450. Probably going to have it in there for maybe 10 minutes, 15 tops. What you're looking for is, keep checking on it, you want to see that stuffing brown up a little bit on top, all right? All right, we're going to take a break for a moment here, and we're going to just kind of reset the stage for the appetizer, which we're doing in reverse, which is going to be Parmesan crusted clams. All right, our lobsters are in the oven, and we are ready to move on to our Parmesan crusted clams. This is one of my favorite things to serve at a dinner party. It's beautiful, they're delicious, they're easy, kind of finger appetizer type foods. So what I have here is I put these clams in a centimeter of water. I used the stock that we got from steaming the lobsters and a little bit of butter and some lemon juice. All right. I covered these while it was on high heat. They pop open in about a minute and a half. All right. As you can see, all of these clams have popped open. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in. You might need to use a glove, but my hands have been burned so much over the course of time that I'm pretty much numb to it now. All right, so I'm going to pop the top half of these clams off. And again, if you were to look at these, they would look a little bit undercooked, although I know people eat clams raw, myself included. But these look just barely cooked. I mean, really, as soon as they pop open, you're ready to go. All right, you can move on from there. Now, this is a good example. If a clam doesn't pop open, all right, like all the other ones were fully open, this one didn't pop open, I wouldn't eat this. That's a concern to me. It indicates that the clam probably wasn't alive when it went in, or it's just been sitting too long. If it doesn't open, I don't eat it. Same thing would be like for a shrimp or a lobster. If that tail doesn't curl up when you cook it, I would stay away from those. So we're just going to go with these 5 clams, all right? What I have here is just some toasted breadcrumbs. So I just took white bread, I painted it in olive oil, a little salt and pepper, and some parsley, and I popped it in the oven 5 or 10 minutes until it toasted up. That was yesterday. Then you can leave them out there almost like croutons. You could use croutons, you could use Italian breadcrumbs, you could use almost anything. I'm going to use these that I made, as well as a little bit of fresh Parmesan cheese. All right? And I'm going to add, because we always season aggressively, we're going to add a little bit of salt and a little bit of fresh cracked pepper as well. And I'm just going to mix this up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these shells, and I'm just going to scoop a little bit of the liquid into each one of these clams. All right? Just a little bit of the liquid into each one of these. Pop it in there. It's going to soak up the bread. It's going to crisp up the breadcrumbs. It's almost the same type of idea that we had with the lobsters when we are adding a little bit of moisture to the breadcrumbs to almost make a stuffing. Although this is going to be more like a crisp. It's going to be more. It's not going to be quite so heavy, right? We're just going to do kind of a drizzle on all this. So I'm just going to take a small amount of the breadcrumb mixture and pop it onto each clam. Now, I put the convection setting on the oven. If you have that, I would suggest that for both of these recipes. What a convection setting does is it really cooks the outside of the food a little bit faster. And when our goal is to create a crisp like it is on the outside of the stuffing, as well as it is on the topping of these clams, convection setting is the best way to go to get that consistency. All right, I'm going to do this. And then I'm actually just going to add a drop more on top of it all. And I would say our lobsters are ready to come out. Our clams are ready to go in. These won't take long. I would say maybe 5 minutes on a convection setting. As you can see, the color and consistency on these lobsters is going to be really beautiful when it comes out. So you can see that really beautiful crust on here. It really browned up nicely. The vegetables kind of pop on here. Now we're going to talk about plating. I'm going to use this kale as a garnish. And I'm just going to set up my plate here. Now it kind of depends how you're going to do this based on how you're serving it, who you're serving it to. But I'm going to get some pretty pieces of kale. I'm just going to kind of lay them out over the plate. And then the lobster is going to go lay right on top of this. Just adds a little green, a little pop. All right, so I'm going to take my half lobsters. I'm going to place those here. And like I said, you know, if they fall apart, which especially these half ones will, you just place them back together on the dish. They still look pretty when you plate them. Here and here. And then here, if this is going to be the star of the show, you can just lay that out just like that. And that's exactly how I would serve them, just like that, depending on which style you're going to use. The stuffing on this is buttery and it's delicious, but there's still a lot of just kind of classic lobster meat on here as well. So I serve this with just some drawn butter. Just pop some butter in a pot or in the microwave for a minute, a little squeeze of lemon. You probably want to serve individual little portions of that butter to your guests or have it available for them to scoop in, and it works really well. We'll take a break for a second, and then when those clams are ready, we'll pop those out and I'll plate them with the lobster so you can take a look at that. All right, our clams have been in for about 5 minutes. We're going to take them out. Hopefully they have a nice brown crust on top. Like I said, this is normally an appetizer. I'm going to serve them right here on the platter with the lobsters. You can do it however you want. These are both just kind of classic New England shellfish recipes. I think that they'll be crowd pleasers at any event you want to run. Let's take a look at how they came out. All right, yeah. So, as you can see, there's a nice brown crust on top of here. That Parmesan flavor is in. I'm going to finish with a little cracked salt and pepper. And then I always like to give a little garnish. So what I have here is just a little chive. Just going to give this a quick chop. Just give it a little sprinkle just to give a little color to these. And you can serve these on the platter with the lobsters. Take them, just pop them right on here. And there you have it. This is a delicious New England shellfish dinner. You could serve this at a party. You could serve it for your family. A lot of people think that baked stuffed lobster is only something you're going to get at a fancy seafood restaurant. As you can see, we did it here and half hour, 45 minutes. It's not as hard as it looks, and it's a really delicious, crowd-pleasing meal. Thank you for joining us here today. I had a lot of fun. I hope that you contact our office, sign up for some cooking classes. We're doing some great things here. Give us feedback, let us know what you're looking for, and we will try to make that happen. Thank you.